Hi everyone, I'm Denise Watts, that's W-A-T-T-S, and I'm just going to talk. I'm going to talk to anybody who wants to listen. When you get to my age, which sometimes I can't believe that I'm at this age, you got a lot to say, a lot to share, a lot of wisdom. I mean, we all have said to ourselves or other people, oh my gosh, if I would have known that when I was 20, when I was 30, when I was 40, when I was 50. You know, we don't know what we know until we know. And how many mistakes could we have not made if we would have known certain things? And, you know, as elderly, as elders, it's our job to share, to tell our knowledge, to help the younger generations. And Lord knows the younger generation sure need help. And I don't know about you all, but I'm sure right now this is January 13th, 2022. And if you're like me, you're just so sick of what's been going on. I mean, I'm so... For almost 2 years now, I've been watching alternative truth news. I'm a truth seeker. First of all, my name, I'm going to tell you who I am, and I'm going to start telling you a little bit about my background first. This is going to be one of many videos. I love doing videos. I've been doing videos for a long time. My YouTube channel is Watts, W-A-T-T-S, happening now. I'll be up on as many platforms as I can get on. Rumble, Bitcom, I think that's the name of it, Telegram, hopefully YouTube. There's going to be some subjects here that YouTube will not let me talk about, but I'm going to talk about them, and I'll put them up on other channels. So I'll post all my channels too, if anybody wants to follow me. So first of all, what I want to say is, I'm Denise Watts, and I was just going to tell you a little bit about my background. So I was born a small little girl child, 7 pounds something, and I was born Denise Elaine Watts on February 12th, 1954. So I'm a child of the 50s, a hippie from the 70s, and I'm still a hippie. I'm just an older, wiser hippie. I was born to my parents. They were married at the time. My father's name was George. My mother's name was Dolores. And I had an older sister, Tana. Life was, I don't know, for the first 6 or 7 years, I hardly remember my life. You know, most people don't. I lived in Duluth. I was born in St. Luke's in Duluth, Minnesota. I lived there and went to school. And then by the time I got up to 6 or 7, I had 2 younger sisters. So my mother had 4 daughters. My mother and father had 4 daughters in the 50s. And we played outside a lot. We went to, I remember waiting out for the bus for school, freezing, crying. It was so cold. It used to be 50 below. It still probably does get 50 below there, but... So my first decade, that's what we did. We played outside all the time, went to my grandma's cabin, which she lived about 30 miles north out on a lake, Rose Lake. They were really mostly great childhood memories. Going to the lake. I loved my grandma. Oh God, I loved her. She's the only one that hugged and kissed me. My parents didn't. So then came 1963. I'm 9 years old, and my grandparents had showed up to our house one day, which they used to come up and visit us a couple times a year. They lived in Whitmore Lake, Michigan, my mother's parents. She was raised in Michigan, and they showed up one day sort of unexpected, and my mother asked us, hey, how would you all like it if I divorced your father? I remember asking me this, and we were like, yeah, because he was scary. My dad was really scary. He was just scary. He was not a fun guy to be around. He was verbally abusive. The neighbor kids had to go home when my dad got home. That was, we had neighbors on both sides of it, neighbor kids. And the rule was when Joe got home, you kids get home. Because my dad said fuck all the time back then. So I guess that was part of it. Anyway, so she asked us if we wanted her to get a divorce, and we were all like, yeah. I mean, because at the time I remember I was scared of my dad. I hated him. I even wrote a letter. I was a writer. I was writing back when I was a little girl, writing letters and writing stuff. And I said, and I'd written a letter and said how much I hated him or whatever. My older sister gave it to him. I remember that. Anyway, so we went, yeah. And so my dad came home. He was a mailman. And he came home from work that day, and voila, there was my grandparents there. And so, of course, I remember seeing him walking in the door, and I remember the look on his face, because he was like, well, like, what are they doing here? And then I remember my mom and dad went out to dinner that night, and then it was set. My mom was leaving him, and we were moving to Whitmore Lake, Michigan, in with my grandparents. And that's what was going to happen. Now, back in the 50s, most of the women stayed home. There wasn't a lot of divorces. My mom didn't have any money or a job. And I know she did have a couple little jobs through the years in between having us kids as a secretary here and there. But so she really had nowhere to go except in with her parents. And, of course, they said she could come live with them with her 4 daughters. Can you imagine? My grandparents were in their 60s, and they lived in a very humble little ranch house in Whitmore Lake that they had built, I think, in the 50s. And it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home with a porch and a little screened-in porch with a garage. And my grandpa had a big garden. And we'd visited there many times already, so she packed us all up and moved to Beverly, except it was Whitmore Lake. And we moved in. My mother had a bedroom upstairs, and us 4 girls. Downstairs, my grandmother had a full kitchen downstairs in the basement. The windows were level with the ground, and, my grandmother was a cook. I mean, they cooked back then. They cooked everything. They grew everything. It was organic back then, before organic was even the new crack. And they canned and froze everything. So she would can in the summers, and it was hot. Michigan summers are really muggy and hot, so she would can and everything out of the garden. I mean, they grew everything, beans and beets and peas and corn and onions and potatoes and you name it, they grew it. And my grandma worked, and my grandpa was a handyman, and he had a nursery. He grew trees and sold them, and he had a garden. And so us 4 girls shared a bedroom downstairs. And it was just a small bedroom with a Murphy bed. You know what a Murphy bed is? It's a bed that comes out of the wall, lays down, and then when you're, if you want, you can put it back up, and it's even with the wall, and so then it makes it into a living space, whatever. So that was our life. It was fine. Kids adapt. We had cousins that lived on the lake, off a 2-lane road. My grandparents did. And then my mother had one brother, Uncle Bob, and he lived on the lake. And so we used to go over there all the time and hang out. And he had 4 kids. My mom had 4 kids, and we used to spend the night at each other's house. And a lot of us were all the same age, so we hooked up. He had 3 girls and a boy, and we used to go over there a lot of times and play. I mean, it was a blast. We had all our holidays together. But I missed my dad. Oh my God. I was like heartbroken after a while. I had this emptiness. I don't know what to call it, but it was just like this emptiness that I miss my dad. I didn't really understand it because when I lived with him, I hated him. So now, of course, it was 850 miles away. So how often was I going to get to see my father? Not very often. And who gets to take their kids and move their kids to another state when they get a divorce? I mean, that's like unheard of. It was, but the judge allowed my mother to take us. So we were moved that far away from my father. So my father worked. He was a mailman, and he worked a second job because now he had to pay child support, which back then, this was in the 50s. Well, we're into the 60s, really. No, we're into the 60s now. He had to pay $200 a month for 4 kids. Well, and that was a lot of money back then. And so he had to work 2 jobs, so he would get to see us maybe once a year. Once a year. And my mother made it too that when he did see us, he had to take time off of work, he had to come get us, bring us back, give notice, and he had to be with us while we were there. That was the stipulations in the divorce. So it was, that part of it was crazy, and I you know, of course, when I was a kid, I didn't understand it. So now I'm into my second decade, and I don't know, life was good. We started school. My mother had gotten a job when she moved in with my grandparents. She got a job in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at Edwards Brothers Book Company. She was the secretary to one of the head guys at one of the, you know, owners, and saved her money. And after 2 years, she bought us a house right on Whitmore Lake, across the lake from her brother. This guy built houses, and he had built this brand new brick home, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath home right on the lake. And in 1965, my mother moved her 4 daughters into her first home that she bought all on her own. Now think about it. That was in 1965. That's really something when you look back. And she's still working. She found us older girls from school that would come stay with us after school, of course, because she wasn't home after school. She had to drive to work. It was about probably 20 miles to go to work. And we just continued living our lives. And we loved it. We lived right across the lake. There was this Grooms Beach at the time that had these big slides and rafts and a clubhouse and a changing house, and of course you had to pay to get in. It was famous back then. I don't know how long it was there, 25 years, I don't even know. But the lake that I lived on, you know, of course back then all the lakes were, you know, summer homes for the rich people. So anyway, we now move into this house. It was just fantastic. We were right across the street from this beach. We got to go there for free. But it was only up for 1 year after we moved in. And then they were tearing it down. They were ending it. It was done. So that, you know, first year, we went over there mostly on the weekends because my mom worked. And just had fun. I met all kinds of kids at school. I made friends fast. I was always one of those people persons. I had a lot of friends, and life was great, except for the hole in my heart about my dad. He would write letters. Back then, that's all you could do. You couldn't really even make many phone calls because it cost a lot of money back then, long-distance phone calls. And we just were, you know, living our lives. Now I'm in my second decade, and now, let's see, I'm 9, 10, 11, 13. So now my mother's problems really start because her 2 oldest daughters now are teenagers. And if you know about teenagers and girls, look out. I don't even know how my mother did it. So I'm going to end this video right now for that first part of my story. I'm into the first, you know, half of the second decade of my life. You know, everything in your life, everything changes. Nothing stays the same. It's just the way it is. I've taught my grandkids that. So I'm Denise Watts. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm an aunt. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother, and I'm a friend. And I'm consider myself pretty wise. I have, street smarts. I have common sense. And I'm just going to share as much information as I can on my videos, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of subjects, a lot, because I do a lot, I see a lot, and that's it. So if you like my videos, like them, share them, whatever you want to do, comment, love comments, and hey, I know I'm going to get haters, and I'm going to get people that make horrible remarks and stuff. You know what? I don't give a damn what anybody thinks about me, because I know, listen to this, I know I'm a good person. I help people. I try to share love. I try to give help whenever I can. Am I perfect? No, nobody's perfect. But here's what I do have. I believe in God. God is everything. God lives in all of us. He lives in my heart. He lives in all your hearts. And you got to tap into him. What's happened through these last, I don't know, 5, 6 decades, whatever, they've taken God out of everything. They've taken God out of the schools. I remember in grade school, we used to say the Pledge of Allegiance before we started school every day. And look how they've taken everything out now. In all the censoring, I mean, you can't say nothing. But it's still a free country, and I'm going to say whatever I want. And anyway, that's it. That's it. I'm Denise Watts. What's happening now? News. Love and peace.